Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Cowabunga. Today we're playing some Turtles in Time, because, it's Turtles in Time. That's all you need to say.
Big Apple, 3 a.m.
Yeah, so, yeah, let's get into it. I have a lot to talk about. This week on this channel, we of course had Final Fantasy XII and Doom, as you all expected. Both of those are nearing completion. Final Fantasy XII has only a couple more videos left, and then we'll move on to Final Fantasy XIII. And Doom has like 4 videos left, or 3. But due to what I'll be talking about for the Exploring series, there might be a break, a small break, between Final Fantasy XII and XIII, as I start uploading something else. But once Doom is done, we'll move on to XIII. Aside from that, nothing too much to say. You know, Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out this week, I believe. But there will not be a Let's Play of that. Don't worry, I got plenty of Let's Plays. I don't need to record anymore for the rest of my life. So yeah, it's just, you know, status quo for the most part. But for the Exploring series, it's of course anything but the status quo. You know, last week I talked at length about the polls and how we're gonna be doing either Dark Souls or D&D. And then there was a big upset that I did not see coming. I don't know what caused it. It was literally just overnight. Suddenly, boom, Warhammer shot to the top quite a bit. Like a few hundred over D&D. And if I was a larger channel, I'd be a little suspicious of maybe some, like, vote tampering. Because it seemed so odd. Like, it's never happened before for something to just suddenly rocket to the top like that. And maybe there was vote tampering. Maybe there's just suddenly was a surge of people like, hey, Warhammer's cool. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, even if it was tampered with, because I could never prove it, and, you know, I'm doing all these series eventually anyway, so it doesn't matter. And so, yeah, that was a bit of a curveball, because I was gearing up to do Dungeons and Dragons, but, you know, I've always been interested in Warhammer 40k. I have played Warhammer Fantasy, the RPG, 2nd edition. And so I didn't know much about 40k. I knew that there were Space Marines, and there was Chaos, and there was Orcs. That was pretty much all I knew. And the Emperor. I knew there was a cool Emperor that was, like, dead, but not dead, and he was on a throne, and something like that. Needless to say, I know far more about 40k than I did last week. Yeah, I mean, I'm a quick learner when it comes to this stuff. I'm a fast enough reader, and I can comprehend things pretty quickly when it comes to lore, so yeah, I've been devouring the wikis. I'm a decent chunk of the way through the first Horus Heresy book. And I recorded a Let's Play of Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, which is what you'll see after Final Fantasy XII is done, I'm going to start that right away. And it's a lore playthrough, sort of. Basically, that just means I stop playing a bunch of times and just talk about the lore. Which, like, I recorded that, like, the first or second day I started looking into the lore. So, I wasn't super knowledgeable, but I think I did alright. And so I finished Space Marine. It only took me like a day. It's not an incredibly lengthy game. And then I started a Let's Play of a much newer game, Warhammer 40,000 Mechanicus, which is like a tactical RPG a la XCOM. And so that will follow Space Marine. So it's going to be Final Fantasy and Warhammer for a little while, once Doom is done. Yeah, so 40K is pretty interesting. There's a lot of aspects that are pretty damn cool. I basically just describe it as science fiction nerd porn, or it's just like a really bunch of uber nerds just sitting around together for the last 30 years and like, wouldn't this be awesome? It's like, yeah, that would be awesome. And that's Warhammer 40K. And I'm fine with that. So, I know it is a massive universe as far as like all the books and stories and stuff that have been written about it. But when you're approaching something like this from a new perspective, like you know, you're a newbie, you know, you don't need to know all those little stories. You really don't. And so it really does not take long to learn all the basic aspects of Warhammer 40K. And it's like, yeah, you know, I'm making a lore series. Obviously, I want to know a lot of these little stories. But already, I feel fairly comfortable just talking about the basics. I still have, like, a week or so to go before I start working on the first 40K video, which is just going to be a big timeline video, an introduction to the timeline. But, you know, when you're doing a big summary like that, you really don't need to know every little detail. You're just looking at the broad picture, and that alone will probably interest a lot of people, or turn a lot of them away. Like, I think it'll just be, people will either decide, no, this sounds really cool and interesting, I want to see more, or this sounds like not my kind of thing. Because when you're talking about timeline, you get to hear about orcs, and the Imperium of Man, and Space Marines, and the Tyranids, and Necrons, and the Horus Heresy, and all that kind of stuff. And the Eldar, and it's just like, okay, you're either on board or you're not after that. So yeah, I'm very interested in it at this point. I'm planning to do... They recently, or are still in the process, it's a little unclear, I think they're in the process of coming out with a new 40K RPG called Wrath and Glory that is meant to be, like... Up to this point, every 40K RPG has basically focused on one aspect of 40K lore in the universe. Like, you are either playing as, like, acolytes for an Inquisitor, or you are playing as, like, rogue traders, or you are playing as Space Marines, or so on and so forth. Wrath and Glory is apparently trying to combine it all into one game, which is pretty ambitious. So, since it's the newest one, I'd like to try it out, especially because you can accommodate, apparently, all the different aspects of the universe. So I'd like to run at least a one-shot using it. And I've also purchased a starter set for the newest edition of the war game, the actual tabletop war game. Which is the 8th edition, I believe. So they have a starter set called First Strike that pits some Space Marines, I think specifically Ultramarines, against the Death Guard, which is a legion of Chaos Space Marines that worship Nurgle. So, yeah, I figured I can't do... It would be like me doing a series on Elder Scrolls without having played, like, Skyrim, you know? Yeah, it's certainly possible, like... Because I didn't really consult Skyrim, the game itself, like, directly for much of the lore. It was all internet-based, because it's just the easiest way to do research. But it would just be wrong for me to do a series without having played it. And so I figured the same thing for 40K. It would be wrong for me to do a series on it without having played the war game. So, you know, if I have played war games before. I've played X-Wing a little bit, and I did play Infinity a little bit. Not a whole lot. It's hard to get people, because it's, you know, it's generally 1 versus 1. If I were to get into Warhammer, though, to get into the tabletop war game, I don't know if I would get into the painting and even, like, assembly. I feel like I would just buy all of my miniatures secondhand. Because, god damn it, man. Sprues and, like, piecing together these little miniatures and, like, gluing them, and it's just... And then they don't look very good because they're not painted, and just... I put them all together, but I wasn't happy about it. It did not thrill me. And I might try painting them just for the hell of it, but... Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So, I'll report back next week with my thoughts on the game itself. But yeah, before we get into 40K, I'm doing a video on the mythology of dragons throughout history. So, from Mesopotamia, the Bible, Europe, Asia, all sorts of different dragons. So, that should be interesting enough. Yeah, moving on then. Oh, well, I guess this week I did work on a video for beneficial SCPs, which was sort of a wholesome, nice thing. No dark horrors and monsters and stuff like that, just some nice SCPs. I don't know how good of a video it is, since, you know, I left a lot out, and people will be like, why didn't you talk about this one? It's so beneficial and so important, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoops. And I don't know how popular it will be, but I made it, alright? It was decided on by Patreon holders. They wanted to see it. So then next week, I think, is a video on SCP-3000. Which will be a nice little break. It's not an incredibly lengthy one, and it's just one SCP, so... It'll be a bit of a break while I work on this dragon video. Yeah. Moving on. Role manging. Roll Mangg. So stars without number, we were heading down into this underground facility controlled by these cultists or something that were using some sort of alien device to turn people into zombies for an unspecified goal. I don't know exactly what they hope to get out of it, but that is what they were doing. And so we had decided, let's just barge in and just knock some heads around. We've got power armor, we've got explosives, we've got psychic powers, let's just fuck them up. So I put on the Doom soundtrack, and we rocked and rolled. We ripped and teared. We were greeted at like the front. The first room was for like the hedonists or something. They were just like, they were like vampires, or they were like feeding on zombies that were chained up or something like that. It was just like this pleasure den or something. I don't know what it was. I did not like it. So I pretty much, there was a little window looking in, so I teleported into the room because all I need is line of sight.
Technodrome. Let's kick shout.
I took a demo charge, I primed it, and I threw it into the middle of the room. I teleported back out, and I detonated it. And we cleared out the whole room, pretty much. There were a few left, but we just put some bullets in them. And that was it. That was the first room. That was pretty easy. God damn, these fucking robots, man. I've always had trouble with these things. And so we get to the elevator, Studs hacks into it, and we get a schematic of the whole facility. And I see some things that I don't like. Like there was a kill room. I don't know what's going on there. And there was like the Desu holding cell, which is a reference I haven't heard from Ziggy in a while. And I can never remember if in Resident Evil 4 it's actually called Nadesu, or if that's just what, or if that was taken from somewhere else and that's what he called it. But yeah, it refers to like the giant cave troll or whatever it is from Resident Evil 4. That's what we. It's Nadesu. I don't know if that's what it is officially or not. I have no idea. So they apparently had one of those. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to encounter that. So I also see there's a nuclear reactor that they have powering everything. I'm like, okay, that's pretty interesting. Let's just blow that. Let's just blow that. One, because I don't want to encounter a fucking Nadesu. And two, I don't think the alien artifact was labeled on the map. I have no idea where it is. I don't want to just clear out this entire facility and hope to find it. So let's just make things easy and blow the nuclear reactor. Yeah, we kill a lot of potentially innocent people, but it's for the greater good. It's time. So that was the plan. We were gonna go down there, blow the reactor, and get out. Because there was a elevator apparently in the geothermal vent area or whatever that went to the surface. It's like, okay, we can just take that to the surface. So we'll plant some demo charges and get out of here and blow them. And so this elevator in front of us went down to this grand lobby. And so I originally thought, okay, we can just put some explosives in the elevator and explode them once it gets to the bottom. But they're gonna, if they are waiting for us down there, which they probably are, this grand lobby is just too wide. It's going to be too far spread out. The explosives aren't really going to do much. In the end, it would have been better if we had done it than not doing it, but it wouldn't have been like an easy win. So what we did do is just... Oh, I'm definitely dead. We sent the elevator down empty so that, you know, if they open fire, we would know that they're there. I don't think they even did open fire, even though they were there. So I guess we didn't fool them. It was worth a shot. And then we, like, rappelled down the cables. And so that we just landed on top of the elevator down at the bottom. Now, I would have thought this would have been extremely easy. And I still sort of disagree with Ziggy making this as difficult as it was. Because I didn't think it involved really dexterity whatsoever. Like, you literally just clamp on to the cable with your power gauntlet, and you just slide down. But he had us roll, and literally 3 out of the 4 of us failed. It's just like... I just did not... You know, when... You know, you make decisions assuming that they're gonna follow through a specific way. And I'm not talking about like a grand plan where there's a wrench, like, oh, this happens and everything fucks up. You know, like if the cable snapped, it's like, okay, you know, that was a possibility. Like, that's logical. We're in heavy power armor, maybe it just, that's how it is. There's too much strain on a specific part, I don't know. It's logical. But I made the decision based on the simplicity of the action itself. You know, it wouldn't require dexterity or you know, anything like that. It wouldn't require a particular amount of skill. Anyone could do it by just grabbing on and sliding. But no, he had us roll, we all fucked up pretty much, and we bumbled and fell down, and that was that. So, yeah, usually that doesn't happen where I disagree with Ziggy on him having a roll when I think there maybe shouldn't be one. But, yeah. And, yeah, I mean, part of it, of course, was that 3 of us fucked up, which is just unlucky. But I think, like, literally we had a 50% chance. Pretty much. I think, because he had us do saving throws. Which I also disagree. It was either saving throws or exert, I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure it was a saving throw. Which meant, yeah, we had like a 50% chance to succeed. I disagree with it, but whatever, it happened. So, 3 of us just plummet down and we take some damage and some stress to our suits. And we are greeted at the bottom by a group of security individuals, security guards. And so we get into a little firefight with them. We're wearing power armor, so they really don't do anything to us, but Ziggy is keeping track of how much stress our power armor is taking. Which is not in the rules, but it is logical. Power armor is not godlike. It takes enough dings and dents and stuff like that, it's gonna degrade. I don't know if it would become useless. You know, but yeah, it would be definitely less effective after a while. And So, yeah, you know, we're getting into this firefight with them. And I'm like, okay, this is all well and good, but they're distracted right now. So I'm gonna try and make it to this nuclear reactor. So I teleport past them, actually, across the lobby. And come on, I can do this with one life. Oh, now I'm gonna fuck up. Fuck. Yeah. So I teleport across the lobby, and Studs we still had on the computer. Like, he still hacked into the system so that he could handle things for us. So he opens a couple doors for me into sort of the research lab area. And I'm just sort of telehopping around. And I make it over to the nuclear reactor, and I just... There's a few, like, scientists in there, but, you know, I'm in my power armor. They can't do anything. I'm just sitting there, like, setting up my demo charges. And they're trying to get out. And so they... They start, like, doing something on a computer. And so I have Studs, like, counter-hack them. Like, stop whatever they're doing. I have no idea what they're doing. I still don't know what they were doing. Because he was apparently successful. So I throw the few demo charges. I teleport back out. They wiped up the security guards. We make it back to... where we make it over to the geothermal vents. We ride up the elevator. We have Alfred flying the ship, so he picks us up. And as we're flying away, you know, we're hanging onto some, like, cables. I detonate it, because I didn't want to wait too long, because they were going to disarm those bombs. I knew it, and Ziggy told me so much after the fact. So it was a beautiful, big explosion, destroyed the entire city. I think our ship took a few dings and dents, but mission accomplished. As far as we know. And, yeah, so that was that. What else? I think we picked up Alan, the other guy that was in the other town, that was, like, researching the zombies. And we also picked up some, like, materials for the rocket that Phil was working on so we could send the black box into outer space. And I think we were just, like, waiting out time, because I just wanted to spend a month on this planet, and then we were gonna go. And so I had a precog vision of the town being, like, an outbreak of zombieism or whatever in the little community. And so this was not like a future event, this was, like, about to happen, so I had to act pretty quickly.
Technodrome, let's kick shout.
Oh, they start you here. That's pretty nice. So I went to Golk's home because he had access to a PA system for the whole community. And I told everyone there was a criminal, a dangerous criminal on the loose, and just stay in your homes. You know, stay in your homes, and we'll deal with it. And I had all the security guards, all our guardsmen, meet me at Gold's house, and I told them, like, there's no murderous criminal. There's zombies. There's fucking zombies. All right, I'm telling you. And, you know, start patrolling the streets and see if you see anything, you know, unusual, shoot on sight. Like, we're taking no precautions here. Or we're taking every precaution here. Whatever. You know what I mean. And so they do actually gun someone down. They actually gunned down, like, an entire household. Because there was, like, a broken window. And it seemed like somebody had broken in and bitten them all. And so the security guards just gunned them all down. I was like, that's good. That's good. And so we dragged the bodies, like, out of the town and we burned them all. Just, again, every precaution. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so crisis averted, but, yeah, there's zombies here. So, good luck. You know, we prevented them, apparently, hopefully, from making any new zombies. But there were still some lurking around. And so, yeah, I'm leaving them with the potential for there to be another massive outbreak, you know. But what am I gonna babysit this town forever? Like, I don't know what, eventually I gotta leave them alone. They gotta make it their own way. And, so, yeah, that was pretty much it. We packed up our shit, and we went to the nearby alien planet that we've been dealing with, and we got our ship repaired. And now we set course for Eolus, which is that Beast Man, Lion Man planet that we had visited earlier. And so they just had, like, some big elder meeting. There's limited number of continues. Why would you do that? Okay. You get to see me do the first stage again. I'll do it as Leonardo.
Big Apple, 3 a.m.
And they had recently, like, united under a single leader for an unknown purpose. Now, I know that the guy that we talked to had a vision of, like, a black hole destroying his entire solar system. And so that was likely to come to pass. I'm assuming it's related to that. The reason I'm going there is because we already have a camaraderie. We know them, and so that's a starting point for creating my new republic. Really, I just want them to agree to send a representative of the government to a council, to a meeting, in order to discuss a potential alliance. That's what I want them to agree to. They don't have to agree to the alliance yet, but I want them to agree to send a representative. And so I mean, we might have to do something for them first. I don't know, we'll see. But after that, it involves just going around to a bunch of other systems and saying, look, we got these people on board to come to a meeting. Would you also agree to come to a meeting? And so the meeting, of course, will be held on New Avalon as neutral ground. And hopefully we can kickstart things, because I'm pretty sure Drethic won the war against the Law of Cain. And so Drethic is now the supreme power in the sector. So things have to be done, to say the least. Damn it. So, you know, we'll see where we go from there. We'll see how long the campaign lasts and all that, and what we can accomplish. But that's my plan at the moment. yeah, that's the plan. You know, like I said, I do want to do a one-shot at some point for 40k. And Ziggy said that he would appreciate the break. So, I don't know when that'll happen. I have the Wrath and Glory starter set pre-ordered. But I have no idea when it'll ship. So, we'll see. Because I still want to do Paranoia as well. And you really could just do 40k in Stars Without Number. Because, you know, it's science fiction, you have psychics, you know, you could have psychers. You could bump up stats and stuff for Space Marines and things like that, but you could do it. I'd probably change the way the psychic system works a little bit, but you could do it. Yeah. Moving on, though, to Dungeons and Dragons, or Dungeon World, technically. Got together with my family again last night. And we really officially started Storm King's Thunder last night. You know, I had skipped the opening of that and had done Tomb of the Serpent Kings instead. But now we actually got into the campaign. And so, really, everything kicks off with a giant attack on a village, or a town. There are 3 towns you can choose from, and 3 different attacks you can choose from. I had put them in Tribor because it was the closest to Phandalin from the sort of last campaign, so it was a very familiar region, and I figured that out, and like, oh yeah, you know, look, Phandalin was right here, remember? And so they came back, if you remember, they rescued Golk from the Tomb of the Serpent Kings. He was kidnapped by goblins. And so they brought him back to town. He's like, thank you for rescuing me, I guess. And he's like, they were like, you guess? And he's like, well, I guess I can give you a reward. And so originally in my mind, I was like, okay, I'll just give him like 50 gold or something. But I was like, nah, this is fucking gold. Like, things, it doesn't work like that. So of course he gives him a bag. Of course. But don't worry, I'm not that cruel. It was not a bag of many tricks or anything like that. It was not a fun Golk bag. It was a bag of holding. And it was really funny because, you know, these are completely new players. They don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that. And even if I had told them, like, oh, it's a bag of holding, they would have no idea what that is. And so I'm like, it's a bag. And of course they reach in expecting to find, like, gems or something like that. And so I tell them, okay, you reach into the bag and your hand seems to, like, go deeper into the bag than it physically would allow. Yeah, I'm alluding to its magical concepts. And they're like, okay, but what do I grab? What do I find? I'm like, nothing. And so they got so upset at Gold. It's like, this is what you give us, shitty bag? And I'm just like, and he's like, it's useful. My sister was like, oh, it's like the bag from Mary Poppins. Which, yeah, pretty much. I think they started to grasp the usefulness of it, but yeah, they were not super appreciative. Because they're very greedy characters right now, so they all want just a lot of money. Most of their actions are about money. So a magical bag was not super rewarding. But it was a funny interaction because it was gold. You'll find a use for it, I'm sure. And so, you know, the giants do at some point attack, and I could have had it happen like immediately, but I was like, no, I want to give them a chance to, you know, be their character a little bit. And so I had just like a few days pass, and I was like, okay, so a few days go by, what would your character be doing? And they all chose very different things indicative of their characters. My aunt, playing a thief, was swindling people out of money in the tavern. My mom, playing a paladin, was like buying food and giving it to the poor. My sister, playing the elven ranger, was like roaming the nearby forests and looking for any like bandits or orcs or something like that. And my brother-in-law, playing a fighter, decided that he was going to sign autographs because he wanted to be the greatest hero in the land. And so I applauded all of their decisions here. So I gave my aunt just like 20 gold that she swindled out of people in the tavern, because she didn't want to go like super overboard. She wanted to stay pretty low key, so she wasn't like run out of town or anything. My mom would have lost money, but I think she did some other activity that would have resulted in money, and so it's just sort of balanced it out. My sister did find some bandits trying to rob a family traveling through the forest, and so she stopped the bandits, and the family gave her like 10 gold or something like that. And my brother-in-law decided he wasn't going to charge for his autographs, so he didn't make any money, but his name did start to spread, especially through Triboar. So that was all pretty good. And after that, of course, I had the giants attack. This is, you know, just from the book. 2 fire giants, joined by a number of orcs and little fire creatures called magmins. And the fire giants start by throwing a bunch of boulders into the town, which is really just meant to scare people away, because they're not interested in destroying the town and killing everybody and anything. They have one goal, and that's to get a piece, a fragment of a great colossus that used to exist. Basically, like, you know, the Numidium. So there's a fragment buried under Triboar, and they were sent to retrieve it. And so they have, like, this magical divining rod, basically, that shows them where it is. And so they're just coming into town to dig it up. And they're just trying to scare off everybody in the process. And they do scare off almost everybody. There is a militia in town. Not a huge one, but there is a militia. There is also a special town guard, but they were actually sent away. Like, some other giants were causing a distraction like a day earlier, and so they were sent off to deal with those giants to get them out of town. It was a ploy. I didn't reveal that to the players, but maybe I should have. So there was a militia of just townspeople that were equipped, and they had sort of gathered as everybody was running from the giants, and even a few of the militia members were running away as well. And I'm like, yeah, they look very nervous. They're disorganized, and none of them are really leading a charge. And so this was an opportunity for the players to sort of rally the militia and get them involved. And so my brother-in-law just was like, you know, if you want to be heroes like me, come on. Or it was something like that. It wasn't particularly motivating. And so if he had said something really badass, I wouldn't have even had him roll, but it was a little half-hearted, I thought. So I had him roll charisma, a parlay, and he failed. So I'm just like, because he wasn't even like leading the charge as he said it. He was just standing there and he said it, and I was like, yeah, they don't seem particularly inspired by you, and a bunch more run off. And so this encounter, they're really not meant to win it. Because even if they do stop the 2 fire giants and they drive them off, they come back later with like 5 more giants and just stomp the town and take what they want. Like, no matter what, they get this piece of this Colossus. It happens. And so it's really just meant to show how badass fire giants are, or giants in general, because this is going to be the first time players probably encounter them. And so, you know, we played it out. It was difficult with Dungeon World, because this is all theater of their mind, and there's 2 fire giants, there's like 6 orcs riding axe beaks, there's 5 Orogs, which are like bigger orcs, and then there's 12 Magmen, which are the little fire goblin things. And so that's that's over 20 combatants. You know, with the players, that's like 25 or something combatants. It's an excessive amount. And so you really can't just have like all of them come and rush at you. You could, but the players would probably be overwhelmed unless I really made them non-threatening. So I sort of did it piecemeal a little bit, and of course I made things easier. I'm playing pretty easy on them for now. And so they were, you know, they were attacked by some orcs, and they were firing their bows, and they were killed off a bunch of orcs, but the fire giants were entering the town now, and they were just not sure about what to do with these fire giants. Because, you know, with Dungeon World, you can make things appear pretty damn threatening. I mean, it's a fucking giant. Like, it doesn't really matter how much HP they have or what, it's a fucking giant. They can grab you and just squash you with one motion. Like, it's tricky. But they did debate about whether or not to just flee. Which is certainly a valid option. Like I said, they're gonna get the fragment no matter what. So you could just flee and come back, and the campaign would continue. But you would not be regarded as any sort of heroes by the town. And I think that's probably what they realized, is they're trying to be heroes. So they did pretty much end up charging the giants. And it's a little weird. You know, like I said, my brother-in-law, he's playing a fighter. He wants to be the greatest hero in the land. And so you'd think that would be like a fairly archetypical character, the knight in shining armor. But for his signature weapon, he picked a crossbow. Like, that's like his unique special weapon, is a crossbow. which is really strange. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable to be unique. It's just I would not expect it. And so, with him on a crossbow, you have my sister playing an Elven Ranger, of course, with a bow. We do have... My aunt does have just a rapier. She is a melee character, but she tends to be far more sneaky. So she's not, like, charging into the front of combat. So really, that just leaves my mom playing a Paladin, who does not have a ranged weapon. Although she desperately wants one. She keeps forgetting to buy one. So, they have no magic, really, whatsoever. The Paladin can lay on hands, but that's it. They really are not a magic-oriented group. Which is interesting. I think some people, when they start up D&D, they're just immediately drawn to magic. Like, why would you not be? But even I, who, at this point, I almost exclusively play spellcasters of some type, or psychic characters, I started with a dwarf thief, and then I moved on to, like, a human fighter. So, it took me a little while to get to magic. So, I'm sure they'll get there at some point. So, they confront the giants, and I debated about how difficult I wanted to make the giants. If I just have it so that, like, their arrows just bounce off. Like, they can't really do anything to the giants, and the giants are just swinging these massive swords, and they can't even get close to them. That would have been effective in showing, like, yeah, giants are fucking badass. Like, you are not prepared to come close to them. Which I think is part of the point. But I wanted to strike a middle ground where it's like, yeah, you can hurt them. They are made of flesh and blood. But they are incredibly dangerous, and it's going to be quite difficult to actually kill one. And so they start pelting them with arrows and things like that. I think my aunt at one point climbs up the back of one of them and is like, I saw off its head. I cut off its head. And she became just convinced that that's what happened. Because it's like, you know, I have a sword. I'm at its neck. I cut it off. And it's like, first of all, you're using a rapier. And I had to show her a picture of it. Because she just did not understand. This is not a sawing weapon. And second of all, it's a fucking giant. It's just not going to happen. But they did do some cool moves. I was impressed. You know, they're thinking improvisationally. And they did note that giants were apparently using this divining rod for some purpose. They couldn't really figure it out yet. But they knew that it was important to them, so they tried to shoot at the giant's hand so that it dropped it. And I was like, okay, that's fine. It was a little too late, so the giants had already pretty much figured out where this fragment was buried, but I had them drop it. There were some hairy moments where the giants were literally like about to smash down their boot on a couple of them. But when you give them those like super scary moments where like one of their companions is about to just die, that's when they really like leap into like, I do this, you know, and they're jumping to defend them and stop it and blah blah blah. And so I was like, that's good. And you know, it was a little tricky sometimes to keep coming up with like hard choices for a lengthy battle against a couple giants.
Technodrome, let's kick shout.
Especially with them doing volleys and picking the option where they get put into danger, and it's like, okay, you have to keep making this make sense, but you don't want to just repeat yourself. But I thought it was all right. And there was a little bit of mixture of soft moves and hard moves. you know, at one point, sometimes it would be like, okay, it's about to grab you or it's about to smash into you. What do you do? And another time, like after my aunt tried to saw off the giant's head, I'm just like, okay, the giant just quickly reaches back and grabs you off of its shoulder. And she was like, it grabs me? It was like, yep. Yep. Done deal. And so it's like, it's about to just squish you. And so it's like, okay, that was a bit of a hard move, but it moved into a soft move again, where there's somebody could stop it. And so, my brother-in-law, like, shot the giant in the fucking eyeball, and he rolled exceptionally well, like, basically a crit. And I was like, okay, like, you basically blind this thing in one eye, it drops, you know, the character, and it pretty much takes its ball and goes home. So they didn't kill one giant, but they did send one packing. But the other one continued digging into the ground with its sword, and they were bothering it as well, because they literally just kept shooting arrows at it, and I had kind of ignored the Orogs and the Magmans. I threw a few of them in there, here and there. They were really supposed to be more involved, so it wasn't just them hammering on some giants that were trying to dig. But it was tough to manage all that sort of stuff. You know, you don't have a turn order, remember. And I'm learning how to DM Dungeon World. I really haven't done it much. But eventually this thing's like, fuck it. And so it digs into the ground with its fingers and just rips out this fragment. And, you know, all the characters just get showered with pieces of earth and stuff like that, and mud. And it takes the fragment and just starts leaving town. And so they let it go. My sister does track it and watches it as it walks north, but they let it go. And so they do note that the giant had dropped its divining rod or whatever, and it had never picked it back up, so it was still sitting there. It's like 4 foot long, 100 pounds. And so they're like, what can we do with this? What can we do with it? It's clearly made out of some metal. And so they take it to the local blacksmith. And they try and ask him what it would be used for. And he says that, okay, it's adamantine, which is the truth. That's from the book. It's adamantine. That's all the book says about, though. It's adamantine. And so I'm like, okay, adamantine, that's got to be pretty powerful. It's a pretty good metal, I imagine. So he's like, it's a rare metal, it's very durable. There seems to be a magical aura around this, but I don't know what they were using it for. And so my aunt asked, oh, he did say I would buy this off of you if you would sell it. And my aunt asked how much, and he said 500 gold, which, like I said, they liked money, so this definitely intrigued them. But they took it to the other blacksmith in town, who offered them 550 gold, but also directed them to a local magic aficionado, I guess, who could possibly tell them about the magical enchantment. And so they're like, okay, this is interesting. And so they take it to the guy. He looks it over. He says it's basically used to find objects. Specifically, adamantine objects. And he tells them, I give him a little bit of backstory about the Colossus and how it was used to kill dragons in a great war between giants and dragons. And I think they wrote it down, but I don't think it'll really become relevant to them until later. And so he told them that, they asked him, of course, what do you think this is worth? Because, again, it's all about money. But they learn it's not always about money. He says to a forge master, to a blacksmith, probably, 500-600 gold. But to a magical smith, because adamantine is receptive, especially receptive to magical enchantments. It could be worth 2,000 gold. And I completely made that up. I don't know if there's any... in D&D, I don't know if there's metal that's specifically better to be enchanted or not. But I was like, that's interesting. That's probably cool. And that gets them maybe onto further things than just money. Because, you know, they don't have much experience with magic at all. This was a very smart decision on my part, as it turned out. Because they're like, okay, where would we find a magical smith? And he, of course, told them probably Neverwinter or Waterdeep. Or he directed them to Silvery Moon. Because he also told them about, like, this magic cache of items that, as a reward for dealing with the giants and scaring them off, he told them about this special secret cache of magic items in the Silvery Moon. And they decided, okay, if we take it to a magical smith, we can at least get a lot more money for it. So at the very least, they would do that. But they spent a lot of time talking about this, and they were like, well, what if we make swords out of this? And then we get them enchanted, and we have magic swords. And they pretty much all liked this idea. Over the money. Keep in mind, this was a change now. They were not just focused about money. They thought magic swords was even better than money. Which, yeah, it is. And so they went to the blacksmith, and they asked if he would make this metal into swords for them. And I decided that there wasn't enough to make 4 long swords, which is what they wanted. And he's like, I could make 3 perhaps. And so they changed it to 2 long swords, 2 short swords. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And he was going to charge them 100 gold to do it. And this would have been literally all of their money. Like, all of them putting all their money in. They would have been able to do it. But they didn't really like that, so they tried to haggle. And I was like, you know, this guy really hates giants. These Puros are clearly enemies of giants. He's going to do him a bit of a favor. And do it for only 50 gold. He could have done it for free, but, you know, he's a dwarf. I don't know what that means. And he also gives them a letter of recommendation if they take it to a certain, like, citadel. Because he's, like, a famous blacksmith. So he gives them a letter of recommendation. That they might get rewarded if they go here and give it to them. To a king and queen. So they get their swords, and they spend a couple days in town. I ask them again what they're sort of doing with their characters. And again, now they're starting to get into a little bit more. My brother-in-law, like, teaches some of the militia how to fight. But he charges. So he does get a few students, and he gets some money out of that. My aunt, again, swindles people. My sister did a couple things, but one of them was, like, finding some horses that were scared off by the giant attack, which was good. And she brought them back, so she got rewarded for that. And my mom was, like, tending to the injured, because now she realizes, oh, she can heal people. So she takes care of the injured. And this was a good opportunity for me to give them another side quest. This one they really latched onto, so this was, again, a good idea. One of the injured people is like, oh, you're a good soul. And it's like, yeah, this is my mom. Of course she is. And so he tells her about this this dwarf criminal that is wanted, and there's a 5,000 gold bounty on him. And this just lit up their eyes, like, oh my god, 5,000 gold. Imagine what we could do. And so, you know, I gave them like the whole map of the whole region, of the whole Sword Coast. And it's like, yeah, you can go to any of these places. And so they were debating, like, okay, here's Neverwinter, here's Waterdeep, you know, here's Silvery Moon, here's the Citadel, here's where this dwarf was last seen, and here's where they want him to be taken for the reward. And so they were mapping things out, and they're like, okay, the giant's headed north, this dwarf is to the north, let's go north. So they pack up, and they head out on the road north, and I thought about having some side encounter, but I was like, no, we'll keep things moving. They make it to a small little village called Longsaddle along the way, and they see a poster, a wanted poster for the dwarf, so, you know, he's apparently getting around and doing some bad shit. And so they go into the bar, and they ask if there's any wizards in town. And it was really kind of perfect, because I didn't even have to make this up. Literally, the book talks about how near the town, there is a family of wizards that actually founded the town. They don't really participate in the town. They live in their mansion nearby. But yeah, they sort of, I guess, prevent any, like, orcs from attacking the town or brigands or anything like that. So they are sort of protectors of the town. And so the bartender was very suspicious of them for just asking about wizards like that. But he decided that, you know, the wizards can take care of themselves. So he directed them to the mansion. And they go down the path, past some trees, and they go up to the mansion. And they're real suspicious of these wizards. So my sister, like, sneaks around to the back of the house. But she doesn't really do it very well. And so she sort of pops around to the back where there's a couple people, and they're like, the guy's very cordial. I made the family very cordial. They could have been assholes. I made them cordial. And so they spoke to the butler. They got let into the parlor. They do eventually talk to the main wizard. And they explain the predicament. They're hunting giants. They're hunting this criminal. They have swords. They want enchantments. And so he asks how much coin they have. Because, you know, magical enchantment, like, it's not cheap. This is like a rare art that not anybody can do. But they don't have any money. And so they tried to, like, be like, well, you know, we're going to go capture this dwarf. And we're going to get 5,000 gold from it. So we can come back and we'll pay you with that. And I was like, you know, I could do that, but he's not stupid. He has really no idea if they would actually do that. So it's just not a good way to do business. So I'm like, alright, I gotta have a side quest here. I gotta have something quick and simple but interesting. And I think basilisks are awesome, and I don't think they get used enough. Like, I don't think Ziggy's ever used a basilisk ever in any adventure, in anything. I'm like, I'm gonna have him fight a fucking basilisk. And so he's like, how about an alternative? 10 or so miles northwest of here, there's a cave. And inside there's a large reptile called a basilisk. Capable of turning flesh to stone with its gaze. If you kill this creature and bring me back its eyes, I will enchant your swords. And so they asked him for, like, advice and stuff like that on how to do this, and he suggested perhaps using a mirror. And they asked him for a mirror. He had, like, basically a hand mirror. They wanted more than that, so they actually went into town and they purchased or they borrowed, really. They paid to borrow a body-length mirror from this woman, who was a real bitch. And she charged them like 20 gold to borrow the mirror. And she would only give the gold back if they brought the mirror back intact. And so they agreed. They paid the 20 gold. And I was like, there's very little chance that mirror is coming back intact. But maybe. And, I mean, if they accomplish their goal, weapon enchantments is worth far more than that, so it's acceptable. So, they head to the cave. And their belief was, they basically piled in behind the mirror, and they wheeled it into the cave, and they all went behind it. And their belief was that this basilisk would look at the mirror and would turn himself to stone. I did tell them it's a process that takes like 30 seconds. The wizard did tell them that. Oh, I also had the wizard be like basically in a suit with like, you know, a handsome man in his 40s. Because I think they all thought wizards were basically Gandalf, and I was like, I gotta challenge that a little bit. So I thought that was a good idea. But it was interesting, because really none of them knew what a basilisk was. In fact, they thought that I invented that creature on the spot. Which is sort of odd, because I think it's in the Harry Potter... It's like in the second one or something, and I know my aunt's a fan, so I don't know. So they thought that this creature would turn itself to stone. And I was like, in my head I thought, I'm pretty sure basilisks are always immune to that, to their own effects. But I was like, you know what? They think that. Why not make it true? That's kind of what Dungeon World is often about. So they wheel it in. They have a torch. The basilisk, they can't see it. They're not looking. They're all behind the mirror. But I have the basilisk basically look at the mirror, and he does, like, start to stiffen up. Like, the effect does start to hit him. But he can just close his eyes or look away. You know, as a person, you can't just close your eyes and the effect will stop. You know, it doesn't work like that. It's all about his eyes. So I had him close his eyes. I had the basilisk close its eyes. And then he just started thrashing around, because it's probably never happened to him. He's never turned to stone. So this thing was not going to turn itself to stone unless they forced its eyes open into the mirror, which would be highly difficult. But it does have its eyes closed. And it is thrashing around. And so eventually they do pop out and hit it with an arrow. And they wound it pretty good. And so I'm like, alright, fuck that. It opens its eyes and now it charges at you. And so they try and, like, dive out of the way. They both, like, fail their rolls. My mom steps in to, like, take the brunt of the attack, but it smashes through the mirror. It knocks her down. And so she's, like, stiffening up, and she's getting bit by it. My sister, like, jumps on the basilisk's back and is, like, stabbing its head. And so they do eventually kill it. I didn't make it that difficult, although I could have. Again, I'm playing pretty softball here. And so, yeah, they eventually kill the basilisk. They were very excited about it. And so, like, okay, you know, we rip out its eyes, and I'm like, using what? They didn't really understand why I was being a stickler about the eyes, because they thought, you know, you just take the eyes and go. And I'm like, it's not a matter of taking the eyes. It's a matter of, like, how intact the eyes are. You know, like, because they're trying to do it with, like, their long swords and stuff, and I'm just like, that's not a... You need, like, a scalpel to really do this properly. And so, in the end, they're like, alright, we just cut off its head and take it with us. And I'm like, alright, you know, then it's the wizard's problem, but you do, you know, they will be intact at the very least. So, they bring back the head. He is happy about it, you know, he's not crazy about pulling him out himself, but he certainly can do so. And he's like, well, I invite you to stay the night, and I will do your enchantments. And then he asks, so what would you like? And this, like, I don't know if Ziggy's ever done something like this, but I was like, these are new players. This is such a cool concept. Their first magical weapons, or their magical swords. And I gave them carte blanche to pick whatever enchantment they wanted. Whatever they could come up with. A magical effect they could decide for each of their weapons. And so my sister immediately said she wants hers to glow blue. And to glow blue whenever there are enemies nearby. Which, I mean, she could have picked anything. That's what she picked because she's such a big fan of Lord of the Rings. And I was like, okay, that's certainly doable. So hers will be, like, always in effect. Like, there will be no charges or anything like that. Basically, if there's anything within, like, I don't know, 100 feet that she would consider an enemy, I'd probably have it glow. I mean, there's going to be some fringe cases, but we'll see. My brother-in-law decided that he wants his to shoot, like, electrical blasts. And I was like, okay, done. But then my mom and my aunt were sort of struggling to come up with stuff because it was just like, she wanted like a list of examples, and I was like, no, just come up with anything you want. And so my brother-in-law suggested for my mom, the Paladin, that she can slam the sword into the ground and it will create like a protective shield around her. And my mom loved that because she's trying to be so like defensive and protective. So she loved that. And I was like, okay, done. They were struggling to come up with for my aunt, and so I was like, how about you can it turns you invisible. And her eyes just lit up. She was like, I love it. I want that. I want that. And it's like, yeah, I know. She's such a sneaky thief, of course, who wouldn't love that? And so that's what they all decided on. And it's like, you know, there aren't rules for any of these effects. And it's like, you know, if you were a stickler DM for D&D, it'd be like, well, you know, you need a level 8, a level whatever wizard, and it costs these reagents and this amount of money, and you can only have these effects. And it's just like, fuck all that. These are people that are falling into this fantasy universe, and they are, you know, enamored with the idea of a magic sword that can create a protective shield around them. And it's just like, fuck it, just let it happen, man. Just do it. It's awesome. So there's going to be limits. You know, they're not going to be able to spam these abilities. Most of them are going to be like twice a day or maybe 3 times a day, and then it'll recharge the next day. But still, like, they're going to remember these fucking magic swords. No doubt about it. So, yeah, they all loved the concept, and I told them, I was like, yeah, I, you know, completely made all that stuff up, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. So, yeah, I think they're really digging it, and it should be a lot of fun. And it's like, okay, so my aunt will probably be able to turn invisible twice a day for a minute, or something like that. Is that gonna break the campaign? Like, maybe if I could do it as a player in a campaign, maybe I could find a way to break it. But no, these people are not campaign breakers. They're new players, and this is just really cool stuff. So yeah, fuck it, let them have it. I think it's awesome. They think it's awesome. So yeah, they're all very excited to use their magic swords and to continue on their quest to catch this dwarf and get some money and track down these giants. Because now they're learning that apparently the giants are causing a lot of problems around the region. So, yeah, awesome stuff. Really good. I recommend Dungeon World. It is, we all like it much better than D&D. But alright, I've talked for long enough. All of my hanging with Mangs are over an hour now because I have 2 RPGs to talk about. But we got more Final Fantasy XII and Doom this week, along with Warhammer Space Marine. Check out the Beneficial SCPs video. I don't know if the dragon video will drop this week, but I'm hoping so. And that's about it. So, my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks next week.